The principal humiliated the janitor in front of everyone. But her response silenced the entire school. Catherine Miller never imagined that one day she would be cleaning the same hallways where she once walked as a respected university professor. Her life had crumbled 3 years earlier when a fabricated scandal destroyed her academic career, forcing her to accept any work to survive. It was during the morning break that Principal Victoria Sterling found her cleaning the floor of the main hallway at St. Jude's Academy, the most prestigious private school in Chicago. In a voice loud enough for dozens of students and teachers to hear, Victoria pointed her finger at Catherine. "You are completely incompetent," shouted the principal, her face red with anger. "Just look at this mess you left here. Someone like you shouldn't even set foot in this educational environment." Catherine remained silent, holding the mop with trembling hands, while feeling the curious and embarrassed stares of everyone around her. Tears threatened to well up, but she held them back. At 42, she had learned to swallow the daily humiliation her job as a janitor imposed on her. "Did you hear what I said?" continued Victoria, each word dripping with contempt. "People like you are the problem with education in our country. Unprepared, unknowledgeable, without—" It was then that Catherine raised her eyes, meeting the principal's gaze directly. In a calm, clear voice, she uttered just one phrase in perfect Latin. "Veritas numquam perit, scientia potentia est." The silence that followed was deafening. Students stopped talking, teachers interrupted their walks, even the sound of footsteps ceased. Victoria visibly paled, her eyes widening in absolute shock. The quotation Catherine had spoken wasn't just any memorized phrase. It was a specific academic reference, a combination of Seneca and Francis Bacon that only someone with deep knowledge of classical philosophy would recognize, and Victoria had recognized it. "Truth never perishes, knowledge is power," Catherine translated calmly, still holding the principal's gaze. "I believe you understood perfectly." Victoria's reaction was immediate and revealing. She took a step back, her expression changing from contempt to something close to panic. How could a simple janitor know quotations she herself had only studied during her doctorate in education? The history teacher, Anthony Collins, who had witnessed the entire scene, discreetly approached. There was something familiar about that woman's voice and bearing, something that stirred memories from years ago. "Excuse me, Principal," he said, addressing Victoria, but without taking his eyes off Catherine. "We need to talk about the exam schedule." The interruption broke the tense moment, but it didn't erase the impact of what had happened. As Victoria walked away with hurried steps, avoiding looking at Catherine again, whispers began to spread through the hallways. Catherine returned to her work, but she knew something had changed irreversibly. What she didn't expect was that this change would be just the beginning of a journey that would reveal secrets buried for more than a decade. That same afternoon, while organizing documents in her office, Victoria couldn't concentrate. The Latin words echoed in her mind, awakening memories she had tried to bury. She picked up the phone several times to make a call, but always backed out at the last moment. Catherine, for her part, continued her cleaning routine, but now observed everything with different eyes. She had come to work at that school for a very specific reason, and that morning's encounter only confirmed her suspicions. Someone at that institution knew the truth about what had happened to her career 3 years ago. During the night cleaning, when the school was silent and empty, Catherine had access to places that were normally locked. That's how, in the second week after the incident in the hallway, she found a box of old documents in the school office's dead files. Her hands trembled when she found records from an academic conference 15 years ago, held at Midwestern State University. There was her name listed as one of the keynote speakers, alongside other renowned researchers. And among those names, one that made her heart race. Dr. Vivian Sterling. The similarity to the principal's last name couldn't be a coincidence. Catherine photographed the documents with her old cell phone and kept searching. She then found a photo from the conference, a black and white image that made her sit down heavily in the archive room chair. In the photo, she was young and smiling, next to a woman who looked almost identical to the current principal, Victoria. The caption identified, "Professors Catherine Miller and Vivian Sterling discuss innovative methodologies in higher education." Catherine's heart raced. Vivian Sterling had been her fiercest rival during their doctoral years. Both had competed for the same international research grant, an opportunity that would change the course of their careers. Catherine had won the competition, but Vivian had never accepted the defeat gracefully. "I'll prove you didn't deserve that grant," were the last words Vivian had said to her that day, 15 years ago. "One day you'll pay for stealing what was mine." Now looking at the yellowed photo, Catherine began to understand the scale of what might have happened. But where was Vivian now, and what exactly was her relationship with Victoria? The next morning, Catherine arrived early for work, determined to observe the principal's behavior more closely. That's when she noticed something that had gone unnoticed before. Victoria always wore long sleeves, even in the Chicago heat, and had a small scar on her forehead that was partially hidden by her bangs. During the break, while cleaning the classrooms, Catherine overheard a conversation between two veteran teachers. "The principal has been acting very strange lately," commented Mrs. Abigail, who had taught Portuguese for over 20 years. "Since that incident with the new cleaning lady, she seems like a different person." "I noticed that too," replied Professor Deborah. "And did you notice how she avoids going through the hallways where Catherine is working?" Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The teacher's comment confirmed Catherine's suspicions. Victoria was definitely disturbed by her presence. But why? The connection to Vivian Sterling was obvious, but pieces of the puzzle were still missing. It was during lunch that Catherine got her first real clue. Madison, the principal's teenage daughter and a senior student, approached her in the cafeteria. The 16-year-old girl had the same green eyes as her mother, but her face carried a worried expression. "Sorry to bother you," said Madison, looking around nervously. "You're the lady who spoke Latin with my mum, right?" Catherine nodded, surprised by the teenager's direct approach. "My mum got really weird after that," continued Madison. "She spent the whole night going through old papers and crying. I've never seen her cry before." "Why are you telling me this?" asked Catherine softly. "Because I want to understand," replied Madison, her voice filled with anguish. "My mum has always been very private about her past. She never talks about her family, her college years, nothing. And ever since you got here, she's been having nightmares." The revelation hit Catherine like a punch to the gut. If Victoria was having nightmares because of her presence, that meant there was guilt involved, enough guilt to torment someone in their sleep. "Madison," said Catherine carefully, "did your mother ever mention having a sister?" The question made the girl's eyes widen. "How do you know that?" she whispered. "She never talks about it, but I found an old photo in her room. There are two identical women, and one of them looks like my mom, just younger." Catherine's heart raced. Twin sister. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way she hadn't considered before. "Does the other woman in the photo have any visible scar?" she asked, remembering the mark on Victoria's forehead. "No, she doesn't," replied Madison. "Why are you asking this? Do you know my mother from somewhere?" Before Catherine could answer, Victoria's voice echoed through the cafeteria. "Madison, come here right now." The principal had appeared at the cafeteria entrance, her face pale and expression furious. She had obviously seen her daughter talking to Catherine. "I don't want to see you talking to that person again," said Victoria as Madison approached. "That's an order." But the seed of curiosity had already been planted in the teenager's mind. Catherine could see in Madison's eyes the determination to uncover the truth, a determination she recognized in herself. That afternoon, Catherine decided to be bolder in her investigation. Taking advantage of Victoria having left for a meeting at the Board of Education, she went up to the second floor of the administration building, where the principal's office was located. The door was locked, but Catherine had observed that the secretary, Mrs. Martha, usually kept a spare set of keys in her drawer. As a cleaner, she had access to that drawer for cleaning. Inside Victoria's office, Catherine went straight to the personal file. Among diplomas and certificates, she found a folder marked Personal Confidential. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The first document to catch her attention was a birth certificate, but it wasn't Victoria Sterling's. It was Vivian Sterling's, born on the same day at the same hospital, but 5 minutes earlier. Twin sisters. exactly as Catherine had suspected. Continuing to search, she found medical documents, reports of a car accident dated 4 years ago. Tears began to well up as she read the report. Vivian Sterling, 39 years old, death confirmed at 11:47 p.m. due to severe head trauma. The revelation was devastating. Vivian had been deceased for 4 years. So who was the woman running St. Jude's Academy? Who was the person who had humiliated Catherine in the hallway? The answer came in the form of a handwritten letter, found at the bottom of the folder. It was a letter from Vivian to her twin sister Victoria, dated just 1 week before the accident. Dear sister, I've finally discovered who was responsible for my defeat in the international scholarship competition 15 years ago. Catherine Miller used privileged information she obtained through her advisor, Dr. Lawrence Bennett. I have all the proof now. I will confront her at the education conference next week. She will pay for destroying my academic career. I should be teaching at a European university now, not fighting for scraps at third-rate private colleges. When I expose the truth, she will lose everything. Her reputation, her job, her family, exactly as she did to me. Your sister, Vivian. Catherine had to lean on the desk to keep from falling. The letter revealed that Vivian had discovered something about her, something that would apparently justify her accusation of using privileged information. But Catherine knew she had never done anything dishonest to obtain that scholarship. She continued reading other documents and found copies of emails exchanged between Vivian and Dr. Lawrence Bennett, Catherine's former advisor. The emails were dated from 3 years ago, about a year after the supposed revelation of Vivian's accident, but that was impossible. How could Vivian be exchanging emails a year after she had died? The only possible explanation was terrifying. Victoria had assumed her deceased sister's identity to continue the revenge Vivian had planned. Catherine photographed all the important documents and quickly left the office, her heart pounding erratically. She needed to organize her findings and decide what her next move would be. But her investigations had not gone unnoticed. Outside the administrative building, hidden behind a tree, the vice principal Gregory watched all the activity with growing interest. Gregory Harrison was an ambitious 50-year-old man who had long desired to occupy the principal's position. He had noticed the tensions between Victoria and the new janitor, and his experience in educational politics told him something very serious was happening. That night, Gregory decided to conduct his own investigation. Using his contacts at the university, he obtained information about the academic past of both Catherine and Vivian Sterling. What he discovered left him stunned. Catherine Miller had been one of the most respected researchers at MSU before a scandal involving plagiarism and misuse of confidential information destroyed her career. The accusations had been made anonymously, but the evidence presented was irrefutable, or at least it seemed to be. Gregory was clever enough to understand that things are rarely as simple as they seem. If Catherine was working as a janitor at the same school where her old academic rival's sister was the principal, there was definitely more to the story. The next morning, Gregory decided to approach Catherine directly. He found her in the cleaning supply closet during her break. "Catherine Miller," he said, making her turn around startled. "Or should I say, Dr. Catherine Miller?" Catherine's reaction was one of pure shock. No one at that school should know her academic title. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. "Of course you do," said Gregory with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just as I know you didn't come to work here by chance. You're investigating our dear Principal Victoria, aren't you?" Catherine realized she had been discovered, but she also recognized an opportunity. If the vice principal knew about her past, perhaps he could have useful information. "And what if I am?" she asked defiantly. "Then perhaps we can help each other," replied Gregory. "I too have my suspicions about our principal. There are inconsistencies in her resume that have always bothered me." And so began an unlikely partnership between the janitor with a doctorate and the ambitious vice principal. Both had different reasons for wanting to uncover the truth about Victoria, but their goals converged. Gregory revealed that he had noticed discrepancies between the academic qualifications Victoria claimed to have and the knowledge she actually demonstrated in administrative meetings. He had also observed that she avoided any contact with old colleagues from the academic field. "There's one more thing," said Gregory, lowering his voice. "Last year I received a strange phone call, a man asking if Vivian Sterling worked here. When I said our principal's name is Victoria, he became confused and hung up. The information confirmed Catherine's suspicions. Someone else knew about the identity swap. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing." In the following days, Catherine and Gregory worked discreetly to gather more evidence. Catherine continued her routine as a cleaner, but now with an ally who had access to administrative information she couldn't obtain on her own. It was Gregory who discovered that Victoria's diplomas had never been properly verified when she was hired. The selection process had been conducted by the former principal, who retired soon after and passed away the following year. "It's as if someone planned everything carefully," Gregory commented during one of his secret meetings with Catherine. The hiring happened during a transition period, when no one was paying much attention to the details. Catherine was beginning to understand the magnitude of the revenge plan Vivian had orchestrated. Even after her death, her twin sister was executing the revenge with surgical precision. But there was still a crucial piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. How exactly had Catherine been framed 3 years ago? And who had orchestrated the scandal that destroyed her career? The answer came unexpectedly, through the Portuguese literature teacher, Mrs. Abigail. The 65-year-old woman sought out Catherine during the afternoon cleaning shift. "My dear," said Mrs. Abigail, her voice filled with emotion, "I needed to speak with you. I couldn't forget your voice when you spoke in Latin that day." Catherine stopped cleaning and looked intently at the veteran teacher. "I attended a lecture of yours about 6 years ago at the State University," continued Mrs. Abigail, "about innovative methodologies in teaching classical languages. It was one of the most brilliant presentations I've ever seen." Catherine's heart tightened. That had been one of her last lectures before the scandal. "When I learned what happened to your career, I was devastated," said Mrs. Abigail, her tears beginning to flow. "I never believed those accusations. You were too principled to do something dishonest." "Do you know the details of what happened?" asked Catherine softly. "I only know what was reported in the academic press," replied Mrs. Abigail. "That you had used confidential information from other researchers' projects to gain an advantage in a competition for an international scholarship. But I always found it strange that the accusations surfaced exactly 15 years after the competition." 15 years. The same amount of time that had passed since Catherine had beaten Vivian in the competition for the scholarship. The timing was no coincidence. "Mrs. Abigail," said Catherine, making a risky decision, "could you help me with something? I need to find out who was really behind the accusations against me." The veteran teacher nodded without hesitation. "Anything I can do to clear your name, I will do." And so Catherine gained another ally in her search for the truth. Mrs. Abigail had contacts at the university who could help trace the origin of the accusations made 3 years ago. Meanwhile, Madison, the principal's daughter, was conducting her own investigation at home. The conversation with Catherine in the cafeteria had sparked a curiosity she couldn't ignore. Taking advantage of her mother being at an evening meeting at the school, Madison searched more deeply through Victoria's personal belongings. It was in the attic of the house that she found a shoebox full of old photographs. The photos told a fascinating and disturbing story. There were dozens of images of 2 identical girls growing up together, playing in the backyard, studying at the same desk, graduating from the same university. But at some point in the chronological sequence, photos of one of the sisters began to become rarer. Madison found diplomas from 2 different people, Victoria Sterling with a degree in education, and Vivian Sterling with a doctorate in philosophy of education. But what shocked her most was a personal diary, written in the handwriting she recognized as her mother's. The diary entries began 5 years ago. "Vivian died today. I can't believe my twin sister is gone forever. She was so obsessed with that woman, Catherine Miller, that it ended up consuming her entire life. The accident was caused by her own negligence, driving in heavy rain after yet another night of drinking and stewing in the anger she felt. But before leaving, she made me promise something terrible. 'Promise me you will finish what I started?' were her last conscious words in the hospital. Catherine Miller must pay for what she did to me. I promised only to give peace to my dying sister. I never thought I would actually keep that promise. Madison kept reading, horrified by each revelation. Today, I assumed the position of principal at St. Jude's Academy, using Vivian's diplomas and certificates. No one questioned it since we are identical twins. I will use this position to execute the revenge plan my sister had devised. Catherine Miller will pay dearly for having destroyed Vivian's academic life, even if it means destroying my own identity in the process. Madison's hands trembled as she turned the pages. The following entries detailed how her mother had used Vivian's identity to contact Catherine's old academic adversaries, planting suspicions and gathering information that could be used against her. The most shocking entry was from 3 years ago. I did it. I finally managed to destroy Catherine Miller the same way she destroyed my sister. I used Vivian's contacts to plant false evidence about academic misconduct. Dr. Lawrence Bennett, Catherine's former advisor, was easily manipulated. He believed he was doing justice by exposing a fraud. He will never discover that the evidence I provided was meticulously forged. Catherine lost everything: job, reputation, family. Exactly as Vivian wished. Now I can finally rest, knowing I kept my promise to my sister. Madison closed the diary, her tears staining the pages. Her mother was not just an imposter using her deceased sister's identity. She was responsible for destroying an innocent person's life. The teenager needed to make a difficult decision: confront her mother with the truth or seek another way to bring about justice. The next morning, Madison arrived at school with steely determination. She found Catherine cleaning the library and approached discreetly. "I need to talk to you," she whispered. "It's about my mother, and about you." Catherine immediately sensed the gravity in the girl's tone. "What did you find out, Madison?" "My mother is not who she says she is," began Madison, her voice choked with emotion. "She is my Aunt Victoria, but she is using the identity of my deceased mother, Vivian." The revelation hit Catherine like a bolt of lightning. She had suspected the identity swap, but in the wrong direction. It wasn't Vivian assuming Victoria's identity. It was the opposite. "And there's more," continued Madison. "She was the one who destroyed your career. I have proof of everything in her diary." Catherine had to lean on a bookshelf to keep from fainting. Finally, after 3 years of suffering and humiliation, she had confirmation that she had been the victim of an elaborate and cruel revenge. "Why are you telling me this?" asked Catherine. "She is your mother." "No," Madison replied firmly. "My mother died 4 years ago. The woman raising me is my aunt, and she destroyed an innocent person's life because of a sick obsession." The teenager's moral courage touched Catherine deeply. Even though she was just a 16-year-old girl, Madison was determined to do the right thing, regardless of the personal consequences. "What do you intend to do with this information?" asked Catherine. "Help you prove your innocence," replied Madison, "and stop my aunt from continuing this charade." At that moment, Catherine realized she had more than evidence to clear her name. She had an opportunity to expose one of the most elaborate academic frauds ever perpetrated. But she also knew the final confrontation would be devastating for everyone involved, especially for Madison, who would lose the only mother figure she had known since she was 12. During lunch, Catherine shared Madison's revelations with Gregory and Mrs. Abigail. Their reaction was one of shock and indignation. "This is more serious than we imagined," said Gregory. "We're not just talking about an identity swap, but an elaborate crime that destroyed an innocent person's life." Mrs. Abigail was visibly shaken. "Poor girl," she murmured, referring to Madison. "To lose her mother and discover that the person who raised her is capable of such wickedness." Catherine knew the next step would be to confront Victoria directly with the evidence, but she wanted to be sure she had all the necessary information before taking that irreversible step. It was then that she remembered something important. Dr. Lawrence Bennett, her former advisor, was still alive and teaching at the university. If he had been manipulated into providing the evidence against her, perhaps he could clarify some important details. That afternoon, Catherine asked for time off from work, citing a medical appointment, and went to the university. finding Dr. Lawrence was easier than she expected. He still kept the same office as always. The 70-year-old man seemed to age 10 years when he saw Catherine entering his room. "Catherine," he said, his voice laden with guilt, "I never expected to see you again." "Dr. Lawrence," said Catherine calmly, "I need to know exactly what happened 3 years ago." The old professor sighed heavily before answering. "I received a call from a woman who identified herself as Vivian Sterling. She said she had evidence that you had used confidential information from my lab to gain an advantage in the competition for the international scholarship 15 years ago. And you believed her. She had specific details about research that only someone with access to the lab's archives could know," replied Dr. Lawrence. "Furthermore, she provided copies of emails that seemed to prove you had obtained privileged information." Catherine now knew those emails had been forged, but at the time they must have seemed convincing. "Why didn't you come to me to hear my side before formalizing the accusations?" Dr. Lawrence lowered his head, clearly embarrassed. "Because I felt betrayed. You were like a daughter to me, Catherine. To think you had used me for academic gain was devastating. I reacted with anger instead of reason." "And now?" asked Catherine. "Do you still believe I did that?" The professor looked her directly in the eyes for the first time since she had entered the room. "No," he said simply. "Over the last 3 years I have constantly reviewed that evidence, and there are inconsistencies I didn't notice at the time. Besides, I've known your character long enough to know you would never do anything dishonest." Tears finally flowed freely from Catherine's eyes. Hearing those words from her former mentor meant more than any official rehabilitation could. "Dr. Lawrence," she said, "I need your help to prove my innocence and expose who was really behind all this." "Anything I can do," he replied without hesitation. "Anything to correct the injustice I committed against you. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out." Now, continuing. With Dr. Lawrence's support, Catherine now had all the necessary pieces to confront Victoria and expose the whole truth. But she knew she needed to be strategic about how and when to make this revelation. The perfect opportunity arose a week later, during the monthly school board meeting. Catherine learned about the meeting through Gregory, who suggested it would be the ideal moment to make the revelations. "There will be representatives from the parents, the academic community, and the municipal administration," explained Gregory. "If you're going to expose a fraud of this magnitude, it's best to do it in front of respectable witnesses." Catherine agreed, but she knew it would be one of the most difficult moments of her life. Not only would she be revealing the truth about her own situation, but also destroying Madison's life, who would lose the only mother she had ever known. On the night of the meeting, Catherine arrived at the school wearing her best suit, the same one she wore for her academic lectures before the scandal. Mrs. Abigail met her at the entrance. "Are you sure you want to do this?" asked the veteran teacher. "I am," replied Catherine with determination. "I can't keep living a lie, and Victoria can't keep perpetrating a fraud." The meeting began normally, with Victoria presiding over discussions about the school budget and pedagogical activities. Catherine remained at the back of the room, watching the woman who had destroyed her life play the role of the dedicated educator. It was when Victoria began to speak about academic excellence and educational integrity that Catherine could no longer contain herself. "Excuse me," she said, rising from her chair at the back of the room. All heads turned in her direction. Victoria paled instantly upon seeing her. "I would like to speak about educational integrity," continued Catherine, walking slowly toward the front of the room. "This meeting is only for board members," said Victoria, her voice trembling slightly. "I believe what I have to say is of interest to everyone present," replied Catherine calmly, "especially because it concerns the qualifications and identity of the person running this institution." A murmur began to spread through the room. Gregory and Mrs. Abigail exchanged meaningful glances. "My name is Catherine Miller," she said, her voice clear and firm. "I hold a doctorate in philosophy of education from Midwestern State University, and for the past 6 months I have been working as a cleaner at this school." The shock in the room was palpable. Several board members looked at each other, confused by the revelation. "I came to work here for a specific reason," continued Catherine. "To investigate who was responsible for the destruction of my academic career 3 years ago. And I discovered truths that go far beyond what I imagined." Victoria tried to interrupt. "This is ridiculous. This woman is just a cleaning staff member trying to what?" interrupted Catherine. "Expose the fact that the principal of this school is not who she claims to be." The silence in the room became deafening. "Victoria Sterling," said Catherine, looking directly at the woman at the front of the room. "Or should I say, Vivian Sterling?" Victoria's reaction was immediate and revealing. She took a step back, her hands visibly trembling. "I don't know what you're talking about," she murmured. "Of course you do," said Catherine, pulling a folder of documents from her bag, "because you assumed the identity of your deceased twin sister to get this job and carry out a plan of revenge against me." Dr. Lawrence Bennett, who had been specially invited to the meeting by Catherine, rose from his seat. As the former advisor to Dr. Catherine Miller, he said, "I can confirm she was the victim of false accusations based on forged evidence that was provided by someone who identified herself as Vivian Sterling." The school board president, Mr. Edward Collins, called for order in the room. "These are very serious accusations," he said. "We need concrete proof before—" It was then that Madison entered the room. The teenager walked with determination, carrying a box of documents. "I have the proof," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Everything is here, the diary, the photos, the forged documents. Everything." Victoria looked at the girl with absolute horror. "Madison, don't do this," she pleaded. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," replied Madison, tears streaming down her face. "I understand that my real mother died 4 years ago, and that you assumed her identity to destroy an innocent person's life." The teenager opened the box and began distributing documents to the board members. "Here are the birth certificates of the twin sisters Victoria and Vivian Sterling," she said. "Here is Vivian's death certificate dated 4 years ago, and here is the diary where my aunt confesses to forging evidence against Dr. Catherine Miller." Chaos erupted in the room. Board members examined the documents, whispers turned into heated conversations, and Victoria collapsed into a chair, finally defeated. Catherine approached the woman who had destroyed her life. "Why?" she asked simply. "Why did you continue a revenge that wasn't even yours?" Victoria looked up, and for the first time Catherine saw in her eyes not anger or contempt, but a deep sadness. "Because Vivian was my twin sister," she said in a broken voice. "We shared everything since birth. When she died obsessed with your supposed betrayal, I felt I had to finish what she had started." "But I never betrayed anyone," said Catherine. "I never used insider information. I earned that scholarship on my own merit." "I know that now," admitted Victoria. "I always knew, actually. But Vivian's obsession had become my obsession too. I needed to believe you were guilty to justify what I was doing." Victoria's public confession sealed her fate. The school board voted unanimously for her immediate dismissal, and the documents were forwarded to the proper authorities for fraud investigation. But for Catherine, the victory did not bring the satisfaction she had expected. Looking at Madison, who was crying silently as she watched the only mother she had ever known being taken away, Catherine felt only sadness for the tragedy that had entangled so many lives. The following week, the story spread through academic circles and the local press. Catherine was officially rehabilitated, with the university offering her a prestigious position as compensation for the injustice she had suffered. But Catherine's decision surprised everyone. "I choose to stay here at St. Jude's Academy," she announced during a press conference, "as interim principal until a new principal is officially appointed." The decision sparked controversy, but Catherine had her reasons. Madison needed stability after losing the second maternal figure in her life, and Catherine felt a special responsibility for the girl who had sacrificed so much to bring about justice. Furthermore, Catherine had fallen in love with the idea of transforming an elitist school into a true center of educational excellence, where a person's worth was measured by their character and potential, not by their social or economic background. Gregory Harrison, who had hoped to be promoted to the principal position, was initially disappointed, but he gradually began to admire Catherine's transformative vision and became her main ally in restructuring the school. Mrs. Abigail took on the role of mentor to Catherine in school administration, sharing her decades of experience in education. The veteran teacher was moved to see her former academic admiration bringing revolutionary changes to the school. Madison, despite the pain of losing two mothers, found in Catherine a figure of genuine support. The teenager decided to dedicate herself to her studies with renewed vigor, inspired by the example of resilience and integrity set by her new mentor. 6 months after the fraud was exposed, St. Jude's Academy had been completely transformed. Catherine implemented a scholarship program for underprivileged students, created personal development workshops for all students, and established partnerships with public universities to offer free academic preparation. The school that was once a symbol of elitism became a model of inclusive and transformative education, and Catherine, who had arrived there as a humiliated janitor, was now recognized as one of the state's most innovative educators. At a special ceremony, held 1 year after the events that changed everything, Catherine was officially appointed as the school's permanent principal. During her speech, she looked at the audience filled with students, teachers, parents, and community members. "I learned that true education isn't in diplomas hanging on the wall or titles printed on business cards," she said. "It's in the ability to turn adversity into opportunity, pain into wisdom, and injustice into strength to build a better world." In the audience, Madison applauded with tears in her eyes. The girl, now 17, had decided to follow in Catherine's footsteps and study education. She wanted to dedicate her life to helping other people overcome adversity through education. Dr. Lawrence Bennett, also present at the ceremony, approached Catherine after the event. "You taught me that it's never too late to correct our mistakes," he said, "and that true academic integrity lies in recognizing when we are wrong and having the courage to do what is right." Catherine smiled, finally at peace with everything that had happened. "All experiences, even the most painful ones, teach us something valuable," she replied. "The humiliation I suffered taught me humility, the injustice taught me to value justice, and the loss taught me to appreciate every opportunity to start over." As for Victoria, she was prosecuted for fraud and use of false identity, but received a light sentence due to mitigating circumstances and the fact she had not caused direct financial harm. She began attending therapy to deal with the unresolved grief over the loss of her twin sister and the guilt for the actions she had committed. In a letter sent to Catherine a few months later, Victoria wrote, "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know that I deeply regret everything I did. Vivian died consumed by hatred, and I almost followed the same path. You showed me that it's possible to choose a different path, even after making terrible mistakes. Thank you for choosing compassion over revenge." Catherine kept the letter, but not as a trophy of victory. She kept it as a reminder that we are all capable of both good and evil, and that our choices define who we truly are. 2 years after the events in the hallway of St. Jude's Academy, Catherine was in her office reviewing proposals for a new student exchange program when she received an unexpected visit. It was Madison, now a college student, accompanied by a group of young education students. "Dr. Catherine," said Madison with the same radiant smile that Catherine had learned to love, "I brought some classmates who want to see the school that is revolutionizing education in Chicago." Catherine welcomed them warmly, feeling a deep satisfaction seeing how Madison had grown and developed. The girl who had lost 2 mothers had found her own identity and purpose. During the visit, one of the students asked Catherine what the secret was to the school's successful transformation. "There are no secrets," Catherine replied simply, "just the understanding that every person has unique value and potential, regardless of their background or circumstances, and the courage to act on that understanding, even when it's hard." As she watched the young students enthusiastically exploring the school, Catherine reflected on everything that had happened. The humiliation in the hallway had been one of the most painful moments of her life, but it had also been the catalyst for a transformation that affected hundreds of lives. The Latin phrase she had uttered that day, "Veritas numquam perit," scientia potentia est, had proven prophetic. Truth really never perishes, and knowledge, when used with wisdom and compassion, is the most powerful tool for transforming the world. Gregory, who had become the official vice principal and Catherine's right-hand man, approached her at the end of the visit. "Sometimes I still can't believe how everything changed," he said, "when I think it all started with you cleaning the floor in this very hallway. And now I'm here as the principal, not by chance, but because every experience prepared me for this moment," Catherine added. "The humility I learned cleaning floors taught me to value every person in this school. The injustice I suffered gave me the determination to ensure no student or staff member is treated unfairly here." Mrs. Abigail, who at 70 years old still taught with the same enthusiasm as ever, joined the conversation. "Do you know what the most beautiful thing about all this is?" she asked. "It's that you could have become bitter and vengeful, but you chose to use your pain to heal the wounds of others." Catherine nodded, looking around the hallway where it had all begun. Students from different social backgrounds chatted animatedly. Teachers worked with renewed enthusiasm, and a spirit of genuine community had replaced the old elitist atmosphere. "Each of us has the choice to use our experiences to build walls or bridges," said Catherine. "I chose to build bridges." That evening, Catherine stayed a little later at school, as she often did. Walking through the quiet hallways, she stopped at the exact spot where she had been humiliated 3 years earlier. Instead of pain, she now felt only gratitude. Gratitude for the journey that had brought her there, for the people who had crossed her path, and for the opportunity to turn a traumatic experience into a force for good. Her phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was a message from an old university colleague. "Catherine, I heard about everything that happened, and the incredible transformation you led at St. Jude's Academy. The academic community is offering you the opportunity to lead a new institute for innovative education research. It's a chance to impact education across the country. Do you accept?" Catherine smiled as she read the message, but her response was immediate. "Thank you for the offer, but my place is here. I still have much work to do transforming lives one at a time." Because Catherine had learned that true fulfillment isn't in prestigious positions or public recognition, but in making a difference in the lives of the people around us, one interaction at a time, one day at a time. And so, the woman who arrived at St. Jude's Academy as a humiliated cleaner became not only its principal, but the architect of a quiet revolution in education, proving that even in the darkest moments, there is always an opportunity to create light. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story, and where you are following us from. If our Catherine made the right choices in choosing forgiveness over revenge, leave your opinion in the comments. We love reading every sincere word you share with us. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other transformative stories like this one.